Okay, so it looks like we have maybe everybody that's joining. Waiting on anybody else. They'll be just admitted along the way, but happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone. We're getting started on a CLE today, focusing primarily on the new technology that is what we refer to as AI and how that is shifting our practice. One of the things that I want to start off with is saying, if you are using AI in any sort of format, please be very mindful of your ethical responsibilities associated with AI. The Florida Bar and the ABA have put out opinions related to the overlap that affects AI in the various different things you may not even be contemplating at this point. I know Dre is going to be doing the presentation today, and we'll get into some of the ethical issues and conundrums that we face. But one of the things that I think is interesting is what is this going to do to fee hearings? If you see AI generated pleadings or AI generated documents, what does that look like with respect to your ability to capture a full hour for fees and those types of things? The ABA has put out a opinion related to the various different categories of our duties. And I would encourage everybody to go to the Florida Bar's website. They have recently published an article. It was actually last summer, but then they've updated it again in 2025 that talks about some of the ABA issues and the guidance and the ethical opinions associated with all of these things. The other thing that we wanted to bring to your attention with respect to our ethical duties is the ever-growing wave of articles that are out there nationally with respect to lawyers being sanctioned for conduct in which would be violative of our ethical duties, citing cases that don't exist, citing positions and legal theories and elements that simply just are not real. And the reason why that's happening is some people are using Chat GPT, and Dre can talk about that, or they're using Google AI or other various sources. I know Morgan & Morgan has their own internal AI system. I think it's called MX2, that they were using, that ultimately they were sanctioned for doing it because of the information not being accurate. So regardless of what platform you are using, and I would highly encourage everyone to start familiarizing yourself with the various different platforms, especially knowing that your opponent very well may be using it as well. So you want to stay sharp. But regardless of what platform you choose to use, I would highly recommend that you spend some time familiarizing yourself with it, understanding the risks associated with it, understanding what your duties are associated with citing cases or positions. You should always go back, even if you get something generated, you should always go back and read the case and make sure it stands for the proposition in which you are asserting to the court. That falls back on you. So the cases that have been cited recently with the Indiana lawyers or the Morgan & Morgan teams who have been sanctioned by courts, it's because they simply got too tired, too lazy, or whatever the circumstances were, or rushed, and they proceeded forward to cite things that were inaccurate and not supportable. So none of us want to find ourselves in that particular situation. So I would highly encourage everyone to familiarize yourself with the necessary ABA requirements and your ethical duties under the Florida Bar rules. So with that, we're going to hear a presentation today about Lexis's new AI system. Protege is the name, but Dre can give us a little bit more about how this is being rolled out. And we're going to learn a lot of overlap between not only that product, but basically what's in the market right now. So if anybody has any questions, I would encourage you to hold them until the end, because I think their presentation is pretty succinct, but also it'll cover all the topics that I expect that we will need to listen to, as Dre's rightfully shaking his head alongside of me. So without further ado, Dre.
Thank you. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen. And if someone could just let me know if you guys can see my screen. Okay, perfect. So, hi everyone. My name is Dre Joseph. I'm a research consultant at LexisNexis. So, essentially, a lot of my job has always been revolving around helping people with research. And thus, as you can expect, with the evolution and the introduction of AI, a lot of that has shifted to not just helping people figure out how to use AI, but also figure out how to use it efficiently, how to use it safely, and of course, if it's even something that's of value for them. Now for today, what you guys are seeing now, these are the kind of the learning objectives, the agenda, what I hope to be covering with you all. We're going to start with an introduction, what is AI, where we've been so far, a little bit of background in terms of the types of AI, extractive AI, generative AI. We will also be looking, of course, at the big dog, ChatGPT, some of its limitations, some of the sanctions and issues that have come along with people using ChatGPT for their legal work. We'll also tie in the ABA formal decisions, the model rules, how to use generative AI, and we'll also be taking a look at one example of legal generative AI, which of course will be Lexis Protege, as Kara said. So with that said, I just need to turn my camera off so I can see everything. There we go. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, today's CLE is titled The Dawning of a New Era, Combining Extractive AI and Generative AI for New Possibilities. So, to take a step back, artificial intelligence is or is a term used to refer to the simulation of human intelligence processes by machines, especially computer systems. Now, specific applications of AI include things like expert systems, natural language processing, speech recognition, machine vision, etc. AI, machine learning, and deep learning are common terms that you might hear a lot in this little bubble, this world, especially in enterprise IT. And sometimes they are used interchangeably, those three terms, AI, machine learning, and deep learning, especially by companies when they're marketing. But there are actually some distinctions between these terms. So just so you guys have all of like the full picture, the term AI itself was coined, I believe, back in the 1950s. And again, that was referring to the simulation of human intelligence by machines, covering the ever-changing set of capabilities as new technologies have continued to develop. Now, under that umbrella of AI include things like machine learning and deep learning. Machine learning enables software applications to become more accurate at predicting the outcome without being explicitly programmed to do so. So machine learning algorithms use historical data as inputs to predict new output values. And this approach has become vastly more and more effective with the rise of larger data sets to train these models on. Deep learning, on the other hand, is a subset of machine learning, and it's based on our understanding of how the brain is structured. So deep learning's use of artificial neural networks, again, lots of big words, is essentially the underpinning turning point in terms of the recent advancements in AI, including things like, self-driving cars and of course, ChatGPT. Now, I'm sure we've all read, heard, learned about AI here and there. A lot has been written already about the potential impacts of generative AI tools in the legal industry. For example, I know the New York Times reported that it would, quote, change the practice of law. And the Brookings Institute, predicted that it would revolutionize the practice of law by improving efficiency of attorneys who use these tools. But we need to pause for a moment, right? And take a step back, take a breath, and try to connect all these dots because this is a whole new world, it feels like, to a lot of people. And in spite or despite how it may feel to many of us, the roadmap towards the development of responsible and trustworthy AI tools has actually been underway for quite a few years. So let's take a look at some of that history, starting with an example of what is extractive AI. So extractive AI is an AI algorithm that extracts relevant data points from the data it's been trained on, and the models are generally designed and trained to recognize patterns and make predictions in order to retrieve the most relevant information from specific volumes of data and at the same time make connections between related documents. So they typically involve a combination of both natural language processing as well as other machine learning techniques as well. Now, like I said, to give you guys an example of extractive AI, right now we can take a look at Lexis, specifically Lexis Answers, which is one of our earliest implementations of extractive AI. So instead of just providing documents with, the potentially relevant sections highlighted, extractive AI can be leveraged to deliver a direct answer to your legal questions, along with finely tuned document-based results like you would expect. And this is a different approach than many other products tend to use because we've been implementing more powerful machine learning and advanced natural language processing technologies. We've been able to create this workflow that not only gives you the results that you would expect, but also aims to directly answer what you may be looking at. Now, Lexis Answers goes beyond the traditional keyword searching to identify the relationships between the words and concepts and return the key passages. What Lexis Answers actually does, as you can see a little bit here, I didn't actually ask the system an actual question, right? I just put in my search terms, but still Lexis Answers was able to go through and pull from cases, statutes, practical guidance, secondary sources, etc., to provide us those deeper insights. And so the system is providing us with not just answers, but also further recommended questions. Oops, I did not mean to scroll. There we go. So in this way, we're using extractive AI to try to help you guys or help our users get through what they need faster, more efficiently, and in a more cost-effective manner. And so that's one of the ways that extractive AI has been helping people in the background, even though not everyone is aware of this. Now we can turn. So another example of extractive AI. Of course, one of the common things that we get as feedback is the need for efficiency and accuracy when we're searching, trying to find results. And so we've continued to utilize advanced AI technologies with existing content within Lexis to help our users find precise results faster. So another example here is Lexis's pinpoint tool, which allows our users to search by an issue or a fact within your case. So if I go to the next slide, I believe I will have that. There we go. So in this example, we're seeing extractive AI being leveraged to provide a dashboard of results based on the simple selection of a practice area and the input of a topic. Now, this particular tool uses thousands of litigation practice area enrichments across, I believe, over 6,000 legal topics to help our users find specific materials, and the advanced machine learning technologies even matches synonyms to what you are running your searches. So it's not just taking literal text, it's also trying to run alternative synonyms to make your life a little easier. Now, for example, if I choose torts and personal injury as my practice area, and let's just say, my client was driving along and was T-boned by a truck and now had to get a spinal fusion, I can literally just put in spinal fusion, pick my jurisdiction, and get started searching across Lexis's extensive databases. So just with this one search, using and leveraging extractive AI, I've already been able to search across cases, dockets, statutes, practical guidance, administrative materials, etc. We also can simultaneously search through medical records, sorry, not medical records, medical images, medical clinical keys, and medical journals. And we can also see verdicts, settlements, broken out by award, by resolution. We can also see a list of the expert witnesses derived from verdicts and settlements regarding the issue of spinal fusion. So again, all of these results in these different databases, these different sources are all able to be pulled at once because we're leveraging that extractive AI tool to scan through Lexis's database and get all of the relevant information possible. Now I have another example of extractive AI just to make sure we're all following. And here we have the brief analysis tool. So this is another tool within Lexis that we have implemented within the document analysis experience. And this tool uses extractive AI to identify key legal concepts in an uploaded brief and deliver related concepts similar to that brief, relevant cases, check quotes, and provide other targeted insights to help strengthen the legal arguments. And this utilizes the most advanced pillar of extractive AI, which is prescriptive analytics, essentially telling us what can be done. These tools, of course, are geared towards making legal research and drafting quicker and easier. And especially for litigators, these type of document review tools are beginning to weave themselves into the platforms that everyone's been using to do their legal research. Now, while there are several platforms that offer these types of services, Lexis, of course, offers our brief analysis tool. That's our version. And this tool, again, was designed to make actionable recommendations targeted to specific legal documents. So the system allows you to upload your document and double check your document or your opponent's document. So the first thing you do is you upload your document, if it's a PDF or a Word document, and the computer gets to work. It will scan the document. If it's a PDF, it can also OCR that document for you. And then it goes ahead to start providing recommendations for that specific document. In Lexis's case, when you upload the document, you'll see a dashboard that's going to give you a chance to customize the legal concepts, the jurisdiction you want to focus on, so that you can get those targeted recommendations. And then from there, we can go into case recommendations, which takes you into the uploaded document to the particular sections where the prescriptive analytics tool has identified case law that may be helpful to you. And in this particular situation, the system is not just recognizing a paragraph in which these cases are recommended, but it's also recommending cases that may be helpful to the opposing side, both helpful and or I guess the better way to say it is it's going to try to give you recommendations that would be helpful, favorable, or unfavorable. That's the best way to say it. So it will try to give you both sides as well. When you click into the case recommendations, it's highlighting cases that are not cited in the document with the outcome and the relevant passage highlighted so that you can quickly review it. And it will even identify whether the case law is, like I said, favorable or unfavorable to you. So if this is your opponent's work, you may want to spend some time looking at those unfavorable authorities, right? This tool also provides a list of similar briefs to the document you uploaded so that you can see how these arguments were made in other cases. So all in all, prescriptive analytics within extractive AI is telling you what can be done, trying to help you take those next steps to improve your work. Now, with that said, extractive AI is a little bit more of the background. Now we can talk about generative AI. Generative AI, of course, is the new beast that everyone's been talking about. And if we take a look through, I guess, pop culture, through history, sci-fi movie characters with generative AI have always been kind of seen as the villain, right? So, for example, Terminator, often they're intent on wiping out the human race, or for example, what was the other one? Space Odyssey in 1968 to Megan in 2022. That was an AI doll as well. So many of us, of course, are familiar with at least the concept of generative AI, and have been, intrigued by what opportunities AI might afford the world, or more specifically, the legal research world. Now, today, with AI becoming more and more advanced, we're poised to grow exponentially. Our perspective is colored, though, by the worst case scenarios. And since the launch of OpenAI's ChatGPT AI model, everyone's been paying attention, for better or for worse. I happen to be a little bit of an optimist about AI, but I'm well aware that not everyone's there. With that said, let's talk a little bit more about generative AI. What is generative AI? So generative AI is a type of artificial intelligence that is capable of creating new content based off of patterns and data that it had learned through its training, through its existing content. Now, unlike extractive AI, which I just went over a little bit, Extractive AI systems we know designed to recognize patterns, extract pre-existing data, make predictions, whereas generative AI creates new content in the form of images, text, audio, and more. Uh, Unlike traditional AI systems, generative AI algorithms are not really limited by their training data set. So they can learn how to respond to questions or prompts containing information that they weren't even, actually trained on. And this is something that we call zero-shot learning. So then how does this work, right? Essentially, generative AI built upon extractive AI technology. That is AI that locates relevant information, but now we use machine learning algorithms to analyze patterns in these larger data sets, such as text or images. And the AI uses these patterns to create new content that is similar in the style or the structure of the original data, but is entirely new and original. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how lawyers can use this technology in a way that's specific to the legal profession. But first, I do want to clarify the difference between GPT and generative AI. So GPT, many people are aware of the term or the acronym GPT through, of course, ChatGPT. Which is an AI model. It uses the generative AI, not extractive AI. But just so everyone knows, GPT and generative AI aren't necessarily interchangeable. So GPT really stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And it was originally developed by OpenAI as a type of generative AI called a large language model or an LLM, if you're familiar. And that's specifically focused on generating human-like language. So tools that use LLMs are pre-trained on massive amounts of text data, learning patterns, and then they're fine-tuned for specific language tasks, such as text completion, translation, etc. Now, GPT models use a technique called a transformer, which allows those models to analyze the context of the text it is generating and generate language that is coherent, consistent to the context of that conversation. And as we're going to discuss in a little bit, ChatGPT itself should be used with caution, right? But other tools containing similar technology do exist to allow users to generate new content without some of these privacy risks that we've been seeing with things like ChatGPT. Now, although ChatGPT was released in late 2022, the first iteration of GPT technology was actually released back in June 2018. And that technology continued to evolve, improve. They added new parameters, which is essentially information that contributes to the overall model's knowledge. And so with each version, they added new parameters. GPT-1 operated over, I think, 117 million parameters. And that sounds like a lot, but GPT-3, which I think was 2022, operated over 175 billion parameters. And I think the newest model we're on now is GPT 4.0. So we've been moving really quickly. But generally speaking, as the technology continues to evolve, we increase the amount of parameters. The model does get better, or at least the knowledge it has does advance. But we also have to remember that as the models get more and more complex, there's an increased risk or increased chance of complications, right? So for example, with more and more parameters, models start to run slower sometimes, or they start to require more resources to train, or more oversight, just to ensure that they're not hallucinating, which is something we're going to be talking about a lot. But essentially, hallucinating, just as a little preview, is where models confidently deliver false information. And so that's just another reason why we should ensure that, we're all making informed decisions about what generative AI tools we're using. So let's keep going. So like I said, 2022, that was the big shift. That was when ChatGPT was released. Now, of course, ChatGPT, super powerful tool. It essentially sparked what I think is like a global revolution in the world of AI. But one thing that a lot of people don't really remember or take notice of is the fact that ChatGPT was more of generative AI's public debut. So in actuality, for example, in the legal world, law firms and others have been using and examining how to use AI for a really long time now, putting it into practical and sometimes even game-changing use within the legal profession. If we look back to a recent survey, I believe this was March 2023, we surveyed, or we didn't survey, but there was a survey of 1,176 US lawyers, 1,239 law students, 1,765 customers, and it demonstrated that the legal industry has continued to become more and more aware of the AI world and how this technology is impacting us and our profession. Within the legal world, 88% of the lawyers in this survey reported awareness of generative AI, and that's as compared to the 57% of the general public that reported awareness of generative AI. So that's, quite a big, big difference. And 51% of the lawyers reported that they either currently or were planning on using AI. And so it's important to note, though, that even within this survey, the socioeconomic differences, there were socioeconomic differences within the data admin. So, for example, one thing we noticed as a trend was that the younger and more educated the person being interviewed was, the more likely it was that they were to have tried or planned to try to use generative AI tools for legal purposes. And this heightened awareness, of course, does make sense, right? Because like I said, AI isn't really new to the legal industry. Lexis, for example, we've been incorporating AI technology into our database in features like natural language searching, data visualization, and more for several years now. That said, though, the most recent developments in Gen AI, like the launch of ChatGPT and the introduction of AI that can now create unique information and mimic these human-like conversations, has essentially promised to completely revolutionize the industry, including the way law is taught and studied. We've been seeing Lexis is AI and Westlaw. It's being implemented in law schools. It's trickling down. And so it is causing a general shift on all levels. What's the good news here? The good news is that tools like ChatGPT, tools that use generative AI, like ChatGPT as an example of generative AI, are able to now offer essentially unprecedented time-saving benefits. So some of the ways we're seeing this is in the use of conversational searching that can better understand what you're trying to find and consider your conversation history to get you to your results faster. We see this in the summarizing capabilities that's allowing for quicker, easier digestion of legal topics. We see this in document drafting as well. That's been able to provide first drafts of legal briefs, memos, emails, demand letters, contracts, agreements, and more. So what's the verdict? Should we be using these Gen AI tools? And if we should be using them, how should we be using them? Well, I mean, that's what we're all here to discuss, right? This CLE is aiming to help you guys answer those questions. And so to do that, we need to dive a little deeper into generative AI, how it's being used by law firms, and what we should be looking at when we're selecting AI-powered tools. Because it is challenging to know how to respond to something if you don't really fully understand it. So let's start with some more basics. Let's talk about everyone's favorite ChatGPT. So, contrary to popular belief, ChatGPT actually is not this all-knowing general artificial intelligence that a lot of people want it to be. So the reason why I say this is mainly because of how it works, the decoder-only architecture of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is really good at chatting, as the name implies, right? But one of the problems with ChatGPT is that we can't really control the factuality of the responses. And this is because of the lack of an encoder mechanism. What we start to realize is the longer the chats with ChatGPT go, the higher the odds that it starts to hallucinate. And this is a statistical process because longer sequences are just harder to control, right? Open generative AI is designed to produce human-like verbal responses to natural language questions. That was the intention. It was not designed to give us factually correct or true answers to questions. That was not the original intention. And so because it generates its answers based off of a predictive method, it often may create combinations of words that look true, but actually aren't true. Like, for example, realistic looking case citations that it will create based off of how other real citations look. But these citations, of course, don't always link or match real cases. And so it's important for us to keep note of that and also take note of the distinction between open and closed generative AI models. Such as some of these products that have been introduced recently, like LexisNexis AI. So what I mean by open and closed, closed generative AI has a lot of potential. Just like open generative AI, the problem with open generative AI is that it can give you what I call quote unquote dirty information. And that's because it's generating its answers, again, based off of probability rather than factual sources. And because the data that these larger open models like ChatGPT are trained on include lots of untrustworthy sources of information. Typically, what ChatGPT did was scrape the internet and train the model off of that. And if you think about it, you wouldn't go to Wikipedia to get your legal answers. So maybe you shouldn't go to a tool that is trained off of sites like Wikipedia and other not necessarily trustworthy sources for our information. Now, I will say using ChatGPT on its own for other things, like just talking, is not bad. The problem is when you start to use it for things like legal advice or medical advice, especially without human validation on the factual points, on the citation, stuff like that. That's where a lot of the danger comes in, that due diligence aspect of it. So, as an example of this, I'm sure many of us have heard about the Mata case in June 2023, where the federal judge imposed $5,000 fines on two lawyers and a law firm in New York because they used ChatGPT and it hallucinated some cases. So to give you guys some backstory on what had happened, in this case, one of the lawyers had used ChatGPT to find some pertinent cases in a personal injury lawsuit against an airline. And of course, ChatGPT happily provided several cases, complete with citations and even direct quotes from at least 6 cases crucial to the arguments that it had generated in the brief. But guess what? All 6 of them were fake. The brief was submitted, though, by another lawyer at the firm, and when the opposing counsel and even the judge himself cautioned that they couldn't find any of these cases, those lawyers actually doubled down and asked ChatGPT to confirm whether the cases were real, which is a little bit of a conflict, but ChatGPT, of course, said yes, and it stated that the cases were actually available on Lexis and Westlaw. And so apparently the lawyers swore by an affidavit that, again, the cases were real without checking themselves. And so when this whole situation came to light, the lawyers were, of course, sanctioned by the court. They lost their case. And at that point, the legal world just couldn't continue to claim ignorance, about the problem of generative AI hallucinations, because it was clear that it's happening a lot. In that case, Judge Kevin Castell, I believe, he said that the lawyers had acted in bad faith because they had, quote, abandoned their responsibilities when they had submitted the non-existent judicial opinions with the fake quotes and the citations created by ChatGPT. And then they continued to stand by those fake opinions after the judicial orders called the existence of those cases into question. And while the judge did credit the attorneys for the apologies, he also stated, quote, technological advances are commonplace, and there's nothing inherently improper about using reliable artificial intelligence tools for assistance, end quote. However, he also added, quote, but existing rules impose a gatekeeping role on attorneys to ensure the accuracy of their filings. Now, in that case, in a statement, the law firm said that it would comply with the judge's orders, but they also added that they respectfully disagree with the findings that anyone at the firm acted in bad faith. They said they already apologized to the court and the client, and that they continue to believe that in the face of what even the court acknowledged was an unprecedented situation, that they had made a good faith mistake in failing to believe that a piece of technology could be making up cases out of thin air. That said, though, the judge said that the bad faith had resulted not just, from the initial failures to check, but also from the attorney's failures to respond when they were noticed of the 6 cases that they couldn't find, when they were told that it didn't exist. And that's where that bad faith came in. Not only were they not, doing their due diligence and checking it in, but they also didn't do the due diligence when they were warned. They checked with ChatGPT to see if it was real, and then they just confirmed it. And so, since this case, I mean, there've been numerous judges who've ordered attorneys to attest that they're not going to be using ChatGPT or other Gen AI tools to write their briefs, mainly because the AI tools can just invent facts sometimes, right? And so these directives are known as mandatory certification regarding generative artificial intelligence rule. Or sorry, it's known as the mandatory certification regarding generative artificial intelligence rule. And it stipulates that attorneys must attest either that no portion of any filings will be drafted by Gen AI intelligence, such as ChatGPT, Harvey, Google Bard, or that any language drafted by a Gen AI tool was checked for accuracy using print reporters or traditional legal databases by human beings. So it's don't use it, or if you're going to use it, make sure you're double checking everything. Now let's talk about the formal opinion 512. So this was released on July 29th, 2014. And here the ABA opined that lawyers using Gen AI tools have a duty of competence, including maintaining relevant technological competence, which requires an understanding of the evolving nature of generative AI. Now, it's important to note that not only did the ABA touch on the model rules we discussed here, but they also touched on the potential requirement for informed consent from clients, billing issues when using generative AI, specifically only on billing for the actual time worked, not what would have been taken before. But those are just a few examples. So these regulations, these are discussions that have been happening again, because even though it feels like it came out of nowhere, this has been an ongoing, evolving thing over the last 5-10 years, actually. Now, the first ABA Model Rule 1.1 covers competence and the attorney's obligation to provide, quote, competent representation to a client. So in 2012, the ABA voted to amend Comment 8 to Rule 1.1, dealing with maintaining competency. The former comment explained that to maintain requisite knowledge and skills, a lawyer must, quote, keep abreast of changes in the law and its practice, end quote. But the 2012 amendment to the rule added, quote, including the benefits and risks associated with relevant technologies, end quote. And so this was a huge step, right? This is urging lawyers, especially those who entered the practice when computers were rarely, if ever, used, to start seeking education on technological advancements that are becoming prevalent in our practice. And since the amendment, 40 of the 50 states have adopted the duty of technology competence to their own version of the rules as well. Just like that example I gave you guys on the last slide with the hallucinations, when you're using these tools, we have to be worried, keep an eye out for generative AI, especially because of its tendency to hallucinate, which again means to occasionally just invent facts in response to a query. And so for lawyers using AI, the competency extends not only to understanding how the AI is working, but also to making sure that it's producing accurate results and making sure that you're doing your due diligence and double checking the work as you continue to work through using these tools. Now, the ABA Model Rule 1.6 says, A lawyer using generative AI must be cognizant of the duty under Model Rule 1.6 to keep confidential all information relating to the representation of a client, regardless of its source. Unless the client gives informed consent, disclosure is impliedly authorized to carry out the representation, or disclosure is permitted by an exception. This decision also notes that merely inserting like boilerplate language isn't really sufficient for consent, right? So in contrast, the use of the tool as an idea of generating without inputting information directly pertaining to that client doesn't really need that same level of informed consent. But when you are inputting information pertaining to that client, when you're using that sensitive information, that's where this informed consent comes in. Now, ABA further notes that it is not possible to catalog every situation in which lawyers must inform clients about their use of generative AI. So again, lawyers should consider whether the specific circumstances warrant client consultation about their use of Gen AI, including the client's needs and expectations, the scope of the representation, the sensitivity of the information involved. Potentially relevant considerations include the generative AI tool's importance to the particular task that you're using it for, the significance of that task to the overall representation, how the tool will be processing that client's information, and the extent to which the lawyer using and the extent to which knowledge of the lawyer's use of generative AI tools would affect the client's evaluation of confidence in the lawyer's work. My brain got scrambled for a second there. With that, we have some more rules to talk about. So some courts have been responding by requiring lawyers disclose their use of generative AI. As a matter of competence, as I previously discussed, lawyers should review all of the outputs for accuracy. In judicial proceedings, duties to the tribunal likewise require lawyers before submitting materials to a court to review these outputs. And this includes analysis of the citations to authority and the duty to correct any errors, including any misstatements of the law, misstatements of fact, a failure to include controlling legal authority, and any misleading arguments as well. Now, ABA Model Rule 5.1 and 5.3 5.1 first defines responsibilities of partners, managers, and supervisory lawyers, requiring, quote, reasonable efforts to ensure that the firm has in effect measures giving reasonable assurance of compliance with applicable rules and allocating responsibility for specific conduct. ABA Model Rule 5.3 provides similar provisions regarding non-lawyer assistance. So it's good to remember that as lawyers, we must supervise both lawyers and non-lawyers to ensure that the legal services are delivered in conformity to these rules. And just as a reminder, a 2012 amendment to Rule 5.3 clarified that the term non-lawyers includes non-human entities, such as AI technologies as well. Now, generative AI tools, right now, while they may provide lawyers with a faster, more efficient way to render legal services, lawyers who bill clients an hourly rate for time spent on matters must still bill for their actual time. So for example, if I'm using a Gen AI tool, enabling me to complete tasks way, more quickly than I would without the tool, it may be unreasonable under Rule 1.5 for the lawyer to charge that same flat fee when using that Gen AI tool, as if they weren't using it. So the fee charged for which little to no work was performed is an unreasonable fee. So just be aware of how the use of the AI may be affecting your billing back. Okay, so that was a lot of backstory. I wanted to really try to spend some time going through the rules, how things like ChatGPT can get you in a little bit of trouble, etc. And now we're going to shift a little bit more to more of a live demonstration of what Gen AI can do for you, how it works, a little more background on that side. And for that, I'm going to actually pass it over to my colleague RJ, and he'll be leading that portion. So RJ, up to you.
Yeah, thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up from Joel? Thanks, Joel. My name's RJ Kennedy. I am also a solutions consultant at LexisNexis. So Dre and I actually share the territory of Florida. So we are constantly training firms on this type of technology. And I want everybody on the call to give themselves a round of applause because AI is a technical hurdle to get over. And Dre put you through a lot today. So Dre, that was wonderful explanation of the differences between generative and extractive AI. So great job. But I am here today. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to kind of show you what we've been doing at Lexis on the generative AI front. So we've had a tool out in the market since October of 2023. Let me share my screen and make sure you guys can see what I'm seeing. Can you see my protege screen here? Awesome. All right. So we've kind of been on the market since October 2023 with our launch of what we called Lexis Plus AI. So Dre went into intense details about the differences between a closed and an open model. So we have this open model, which is ChatGPT. It's on the World Wide Web. It's kind of taking into circumstances of things that are on there that could be true and not. Closed model is a little bit different. They're secure and they're pulling from sources that are limited. So when you're using a legal solutions AI, you're usually pulling from its repository. So cases, statutes, what we call practical guidance materials, which are checklists, clauses, templates, that kind of thing. And then as well as treatises and secondary sources. So we want to make sure that you have access to that good content that you've been trusted using throughout your legal career. The other thing to consider when you're learning about and when Dre and I are training firms on Lexis Plus AI, or now Protege, is that it's kind of a new wave of searching. So we learned in law school about Boolean search techniques, and we learned about natural language searching that we would normally do in a particular search bar just like this, that you're probably familiar with by using legal research products in legal solutions. So we've learned how to put in Boolean techniques, /3 or within a paragraph, or putting things in quotes because you want those sources to come up or those term searches to come up right next to each other. We're kind of moving a little bit away from that. So prompting is really becoming a new kind of art form when it comes to searching through Lexis Plus AI. But as I was saying, the evolution, about 6 or 7 weeks ago, we rebranded our AI product to be called Protege. So it's able and capable to do a lot more than it was before, especially on the drafting and the document solutions front. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through a few searches here so we can kind of see what this does. So I've got 4 separate categories here: ask, draft, summarize, and documents. They are pretty much self-explanatory. Ask is where you're going to be asking legal questions, doing your primary type of legal research. Draft is once you're happy with your responses and where your legal research is. This is meant to give you your first motion, your first complaint, your first contract, your first agreement. Whatever you need to draft for your case, that's the category that we would operate under here. Summarize, I like to call this a law student's dream tool. This is putting in a case citation like Paul's graph and getting a very, very quick overview of that case. So outcome, procedural posture, that kind of stuff. So I like to call that the law student's dream tool because I know when I was in law school, had I been able to have that very quick summary as being cold called, that would have saved my life. And then that documents tab over on the right, this is where we're finding a lot of workflow techniques have been enhanced in law firms. So we can upload documents in here to generate timelines, summaries. We can help us draft discovery. So draft requests for productions or interrogatories. And we can actually pull from documents using what we talked about today with extractive AI and generating content that's analysis that could be helpful. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through the ask, the draft, and the documents, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some questions. I'm going to steal a very quick prompt on some trust and estate stuff. So one of the cool techniques and upgrades about Protege is we used to be able to, or I used to train firms saying, it's best to tell the system what kind of lawyer you are, what kind of client you're representing, and then your kind of a little bit of facts of the case, and then that burning desire legal question. So my name is RJ Kennedy. I am for this particular scenario, trust and estates lawyer. I am, in the jurisdiction of Florida, which I would select here. And my burning desire legal question is, what types of financial protection documents are available to a person with special needs? So sending that through, kind of what's happening now is it's going through the Lexis universe and it's going through cases, statutes, secondary sources, treatises, practical guidance materials to give me that answer in a generated prompt. So if you're familiar with ChatGPT and how it works, it will essentially answer stream your answer for you. So this is done similarly, except instead of ChatGPT, where we're searching the World Wide Web, we are only searching the repository within Lexis here. So notice the speed and the accuracy of this answer, and it's actually hyperlinking these citations that will take me out into Lexis if I want to review those. And I say if I want to, but I really mean you should, because you do need to actually review these sources when you're getting your answers as a response. So it's telling me the answer to my question in Florida. Individuals with special needs have access to various financial protection documents and so on and so on. These hyperlinks are actually links that take me out into that source, into Lexis, and then I can come back into my Protege response if I need to. I mentioned, notice the accuracy, notice the speed. You also have these hyperlink citations listed below, so you'll have them in list format. But this is not everything that Lexis read through to make this answer. So if I hit view related material here, it actually takes me out to the 21 cases, 30 statutes, of which 29 were codes and 1 was a court rule, and then 4 treatises that it read through that quickly to get me that answer. And the unique thing about this is, say there's a nuance to this question that I want to follow up, but still consider the material above. I can come up here and do a follow-up question if I needed to. So maybe my question is, what are the eligibility criteria for establishing a Florida ABLE account? That's a suggested question that's kind of been given to me using Extractive AI from our answer. And then putting that question in here will generate a new response. So that's an example of Extractive versus Generative AI happening right in front of you in Protege. Now you do have the ability to save or download any of this material if you need to. But let's say, for example, for our purposes, that's the only answer we needed. We're done with our research just for time today. And I want to jump into the draft component. So under draft, I'm going to draft a special needs trust for the maintenance of a special needs child for the duration of their lifetime. The child's name is John M. Towns, and the child currently resides at the Ann Jenkins Home for Children in Orlando, Florida. So I'm going to send this through, kind of the same type of situation. However, our response that's going to pull back is going to be different. So on the right, you'll see where we'll be doing our AI search. And then on the left, we have now what's called drafting mode. Drafting mode is incredibly cool. It's a way for you to actually manipulate your draft. As I mentioned, this is a way to start with your first draft. So this is a special needs trust that I don't have in a form bank yet. Because it's very specific. Maybe in my practice, I haven't done a special needs trust yet. So this is pulling from those practical guidance materials and those form banks that we have in Lexis, as well as pulling from any other materials. So for example, if there's anything specific about special needs trusts that have been, that are in our practical guidance materials, those types of materials will pop up. And when you first jump into Protege, there is a way to personalize your settings. So you can actually give it your name, your practice area. You can give it a writing style. And sometimes based on your prompts and your responses, those responses will change based on your jurisdiction or your writing style that you select. So once that gets going, we're going to have our draft. If it takes a little bit longer, I already have it pre-drafted. So I'll stop this response just for time purposes today. And here's that draft. So I'm going to open this in drafting mode. Over on the left, we've got that third-party special needs trust for John M. Towns. It gives me the information in here. So it's pulling it from a document and it's drafting it for me. So if I had a lot more facts, I could input more details about John M. Towns or about the actual special needs trust that I need. And this, like I said, this is meant to be your first draft. So pulling this off, it's actually got the information in there. So if I had any remainder beneficiaries or existing beneficiaries and I wanted to include that in my prompt, those would show up here. The other cool thing with drafting mode is I can actually highlight a specific section of like a complaint or whatever I've drafted in here and check out these drafting tools over here. So say 6.3 is trustee powers is a really important paragraph. that I want to keep using in my actual draft, I can come over here and highlight that section, simplify, condense, expand, or redraft entirely that section. So if I wanted to expand the section on trustee powers, I can ask the AI to do that. And then I can even ask the AI to replace the document with the actual drafted portion. But because of time purposes today, I will jump into documents really quickly, because that's some of the really great stuff that we can work on. So I'm going to do a new conversation and hit on documents, and we're going to play around with a vault real quick. So I've got Cinderella's divorce. It's a manufactured divorce, obviously not real, because Cinderella and Prince Charming are not real. But Prince Charming is wanting to divorce Cinderella because Cinderella is spending too much money. So I've got in this vault 4 documents. I've got a deposition of Cinderella, a deposition of Prince Charming. I've got Cinderella's medical records, and then Cinderella's American Express bank account statement. So those 4 documents are in here. You know, I can ask it to generate a timeline, and it will actually go through these documents and pull out the dates and times of those documents and put them in an order for me. So say, for example, I'm receiving a case file from a different department, and it's a case I've never seen before, or I'm jumping into a case later. I can put those documents into the actual system and get that timeline. So here it's pulling that there was a vet checkup on January 4th. And I can peruse through this as I need to. On February 14th, there was a Valentine's special spa treatment, which seems like why Prince Charming is asking for a divorce. I think Cinderella's spending too much money on the mice. So that's what's happening here. But it can also do some really great things with drafting. So I asked it prior to do a spreadsheet of all mouse-related expenses with vendor, purchase, and price in different columns. And this is what it was able to do. So it was able to pull out the information from the documents and kind of create this Excel for me to use. So this could be a great exhibit in a motion that I need, or if I'm trying to do some type of worksheet for that. The other thing that you can also do in documents is drafting. So you can go to Cinderella's divorce. You can draft interrogatories that might be helpful. You can also ask it for inconsistencies between deposition testimony and so on and so on. And because we're coming up on the hour, I'm going to see if I can find an example of these that are already drafted. Stop response. Okay, so this is an actual case, but this pulls in the definitions, the instructions, that boilerplate information, and then it gets actually into meat and potatoes interrogatories. So it goes into the information that's already listed in the complaint and the allegations that are made to try and develop those interrogatories for you to kind of give you that first fresh start. So I will stop sharing my screen here so we have enough time for questions. I know this portion at the end was kind of rushed, but does anybody have any questions for Dre or I about anything you saw today, specifically with Protege or with the technical aspects of the presentation?
If no one else has one, I have one. So how does Lexis ensure that its AI tools comply with all of the attorney-client confidentiality standards regarding data privacy, storage, third-party access, and so forth?
Dre, you want me to take that? Okay, so the security of the Protege platform that we run, what's really unique about it is that each user within each account, so say we'll pretend a firm is an account, is siloed off between the other users. So for example, let's say Kara and Joel, you're in the same firm. Joel, you're running searches that you might be embarrassing to run, like what is the statute of limitations in Florida? Kara is not going to see what you're searching. She's not going to know what you're searching. Everybody's information within their Lexis platform is unique to them and them only. So the security that comes from using the Lexis platform is essentially you have a password. Hopefully you're not putting that password on a sticky note somewhere. Hopefully you're not doing your legal research at a Publix bench, where you're leaving your laptop on there. So you kind of have the same due diligence that you have with your attorney-client privilege, you kind of have with your Lexis username and password. So Nothing's really being shared. The model isn't really learning from you and your searches like it is in ChatGPT. So it's not responding to you to make you happy. It's not making things up. But along the lines, something I didn't cover that I think is important is those citations that were linked in that first question I did. You can be assured that those are not hallucinations, because those are links that actually take you out into Lexis, into the universe where you can see the actual opinion or the statute, or wherever it may be. And then it brings you back into the protege world. So
Just
great
to
question.
add,
That was a great answer, RJ. And just for the record, that
sorry.
question came from ChatGPT. I asked it, what is a good question to ask a
Oh,
professor from LexisNexis about their AI software? And that's what
that's
it
great.
gave.
I mean,
We
just to
didn't
add to
train
that
it to do that, I
too.
promise.
Oh, sorry. Just to add to that, in terms of the security, another big thing we do is the way we encrypt and handle everything. So we do end-to-end cloud encryption. We encrypt on upload and at rest. So literally everything, like RJ said, is cornered off. No one at Lexis is seeing it. No one else at the firm can see it. It's just you. It's between
That's
you and
wonderful.
the AI. And in terms of learning, another reason we did not have it learn from users like ChatGPT does, not just for the security on you guys' part, but also for the security and the reliability of our AI as well, right? We don't need it referencing what every lawyer says or thinks. So every time you start a new conversation with the AI, it's almost as if you're talking to the same base level version. You're always starting fresh.
Well, RJ and Dre, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm sure that people might have questions for you after the fact. If they want to reach you after the presentation today, how can they do so?
Great question. So I'm going to drop in the chat right now my email address. It's just dre.joseph@lexisnexis.com. And anyone, feel free to reach out, whether you have questions, you want to discuss a little more, you just want to learn more, anything at all to do with Lexis, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help.
And I'll
Thank
do
you
the
both
same.
so much.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank
go
you
ahead,
very
RJ.
much for your time. No, I think Lauren just said that she was gonna circulate a CLE for everyone, so you'll have their email addresses, plus you'll see have your CLE certificates shortly. Okay,
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. That was
Of
very
course.
helpful.
Anytime. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care.